The cult of the Cleaver. There are monsters that die when the rope snaps or the needle pierces the vein. Their names fade. Their crimes are picked apart by scholars. Their bones rot quietly under the soil. But some killers refuse to end. Some killers carve so deeply into the world that death itself cannot contain them. The butcher was one of those men. His killings in life were obscene bodies flayed into grotesque statues, ribs pried open like wings, faces sewn into masks of pain. He died by the hangman's rope, but when the crowd dispersed and the grave was filled, his story did not finish. Hell took him, stripped him, burned him, and forged him into something else, the devil's butcher. But hell is not a prison. It is a forge, and what it creates does not stay hidden forever. The first whispers began with the men who cleaned the gallows. They swore they heard laughter echo from the coffin before it was lowered into the ground. The priest who presided over the funeral rites reported the soil shifted for weeks afterward, as if something inside pressed against the lid. Within months, the grave had sunk deep, as though devoured from beneath. Those who remembered his killings felt something else too. A pull, a hunger. They returned to the crime scenes, to the empty fields and basements, and felt a presence lingering in the air. They began to dream of him, standing in the shadows, cleavers dripping, calling them forward with a gaze that burned hotter than fire. And so the first cultists were born. They were not the desperate or the unhinged. They were the fascinated, the ones who looked at his atrocities and felt awe instead of revulsion. Men who had collected newspaper clippings of his trial. Women who had hidden under blankets and shivered at the radio reports, but never turned them off. They began to gather in secret, sharing his name, sketching his crimes, tracing the shapes carved into his victim's flesh. They told themselves they were only remembering, but memory became devotion, and devotion became worship. They called themselves the Cleavers. Their rituals were crude at first, carving symbols into animals, daubing barns with blood. But soon they escalated. They imitated his murders, arranging victims the way he had, recreating the grotesque wings of bone, the statues of flayed flesh. Each time they acted, they felt him nearer. Each time the air grew thicker, the shadows deeper. By the 1940s, the cult had spread across counties. Disappearances were blamed on drifters, accidents, the chaos of war. But the Cleavers kept careful records, writing in journals bound in skin, each page filled with drawings of their handiwork. They spoke of the butcher as though he guided their hands, whispering instructions from the dark. And perhaps he did, because the line between hell and earth is not as firm as men believe. Murder thins it, cruelty tears holes in it. Every act of blood in the butcher's name became a thread, weaving a bridge between realms. The cultists thought they were honoring him. In truth, they were building him a doorway. By the 1960s, witnesses claimed to see him at the edges of their crimes. A shape too large for a man, body warped and jagged, cleavers gleaming. Victims spoke of seeing a figure behind their captors, watching silently. Police investigating scenes found strange burns in the floors, claw marks on stone. The cult denied nothing. They wanted him closer. They wanted him back. In the 1980s, whole families vanished. Houses stood empty, doors open, meals still on the table. In basements, investigators found arrangements of bone that matched no human skeleton, sculptures of meat that pulsed as if alive. They sealed the reports, but rumors spread of a demon walking in the fields. The Cleavers grew bolder. No longer a handful of worshippers, but dozens, hundreds, across states and borders. They spread his name in whispers, teaching new recruits the rites. Blood was spilled in abandoned factories, forgotten churches, crumbling barns. Always the same symbols, always the same artistry, and always the same presence watching. By the 2000s, the cult had gone global. Forums hidden in the dark web shared images too grotesque for police archives. Videos surfaced of rituals, where chanting drowned out the screams. Law enforcement tried to infiltrate, but agents vanished, their reports ending mid-sentence. One file contained only a final phrase, "He is here." And still the world turned oblivious, because the cult knew how to hide. They buried their dead in foundations of new buildings, built sculptures of flesh inside walls no one would open for decades. They spread like a disease, invisible until it was too late. And the butcher himself? He was no longer confined to hell. Piece by piece, body by body, he stepped closer to the surface. Not whole, never whole, but present. A shadow at the edge of the firelight. A figure in the static of a recording. Hooks scraping across the floor of a locked room. The cult had succeeded. They had not summoned a ghost, nor a memory, but the real thing, the demon hell had forged. Now his legend is not whispered only in hell's depths. It is alive here, in the mortal world, in the places where cruelty flourishes. People vanish not into prison cells or shallow graves, but into him, their bodies rearranged into new forms, their souls dragged screaming into fire. And the cult still thrives. They walk among us, smiling, ordinary, invisible, until the knife comes down. Their victims are not random. They are chosen, marked by bloodlines, places, dates, all part of patterns no one can decipher but them. Patterns that feed him, that anchor him, that let him grow. There are stories of towns where everyone vanished in a single night, of hospitals where the power failed and whole wards were found emptied, of highways where cars are discovered with doors open, engines running, and no trace of the drivers. All left behind the same marks: cleaver wounds, hooks, statues of bone. If you travel far enough, you will hear his name. The Devil's Butcher, the Cleaver's Lord, the hunger that walks. And if you hear it often enough, if you linger too long near the places where the disappearances cluster, you may see him too. Standing in the shadows, taller than any man, cleavers at his side, eyes burning red. You may hear the scrape of chains across the floor, the sound of hooks digging into stone. And if you see him, it is already too late, because his cult does not choose victims at random. They choose witnesses. They choose those who know the story. And now you know it.